Hey everybody, Coach here. Hey, so glad you took a couple of minutes to join me here. Hey, I am here this week to share with you the #1 killer, in my humble opinion, of residential landscape yards, both front and back. So, I was reading a thread on Reddit the other day, and a couple, maybe 2 or 3 on a couple of Facebook groups. And I found just a common link of problems that I started to put together and then couple that with my experience, and I came up with this topic for today. You know, it is so common and so used in our everyday lives, and yet it wields such a killing power when abused in the landscape. You probably know what it is, but hey, stay with me. We're going to cover that and the Goldilocks effect when it comes to landscape killer. Hey, I'll be right back. Hey, I'm Matt. You can call me Coach. You know, every week I bring to you landscape tips and tricks, design concepts and theories, yard care and maintenance information that I want to bring to you in an easy to understand format. I can't concentrate on these guys here. So you can tackle projects yourself, get the results you want, and save a boatload of money. You know, after 20 plus year landscape career, both as a designer and a contractor and builder, as a retail nursery manager, college educated in ornamental horticulture, I think I can bring to you a lot of experience and knowledge to you, the modern, self-reliant homeowner of today. Hey, welcome. You know, out of all the consults that I've done over the years where people have had landscape problems, both front and backyard, I think this is one of the #1 problems that I have consulted on and tried to remedy for folks. Now, you probably guessed it already. I'm surrounded by it in the background. And I'm coming to you from the shores of the Colorado River on the California-Arizona border. What's sitting behind me there is that transplanted London Bridge. Just as a little highlight, scenic highlight. Hey, but back on topic, you know, you think about water, and you think about the old childhood story, Goldilocks and the 3 Bears. And if you think about that story, it really can apply to water in the landscape. You remember the childhood story? You know, she goes into the bear's house and this porridge is too hot, and this porridge is too cold, and this porridge is just right. And then she goes to the beds, and it's the same thing. This bed's too hard. This bed's too soft. This bed is just right. Well, when it comes to water in the landscape, what I have found a lot of times is we have too much or too little water in the landscape, and it's very, very hard for some people to strike that just right sweet spot when it comes to water in the landscape. And there's a couple of reasons for that. #1 reason is not paying attention to the soil conditions you have in your yard. That is probably the #1 reason. You know, like I hear all the time online about, hey, I'm in North Georgia and I got this heavy red clay soil that I have to deal with. And what do I do about it? How come my stuff doesn't grow? And how come it's all caked and hard? And how come it's all cracked? And that's because people don't amend the soil. So one of the things that you can really apply yourself to is a knowledgeable aspect of what your landscape can do, and more importantly, what it cannot do. In addition to that, and check out this video right here, the 3 R's of landscaping. If you pick the right plants in the first place that are conducive and able to thrive in your particular area, then the water thing tends to dumb down as far as the seriousness of killing it, either by too little or too much. I would really strongly urge you to have your soil analyzed, and then what to do with it once you get that analysis back. When you know what basically makes up that soil content. You know what you can add to it, you know what not to add to it, and then you have a much more healthy, a much more growable soil medium in which to plant your plants and put down your turf and plant your trees, etc. Now, the other thing I want to talk to you about is water control. A lot of times, I would say a good 60 to 70% of the time, the problem rests with the landscape owner themselves putting too much from their house or well water, and when the heavens open up, they're not controlling it. So if we've planted, the wrong plant in the wrong place and for the wrong reasons, and then we're overwatering or underwatering, you're asking that plant to try to perform in a condition it is not meant to perform in. No matter what you do to it, you can fight it and fight it and fight it, and instead of working with Mother Nature as intended, you're going to fight it until the plant dies. The other thing, the other 30-35% is when you have the heavens open up and you got a heavy rains, and you don't have any sort of a drainage system in place for your landscape, and then you get the downspout gutter washing or eave washing dropping off the house, and you end up with this huge amount of flooding, huge amount of erosion, and huge amount of accumulated water in places that the plants just can't thrive. So without a professional, or at least a highly well done DIY drain system that captures the water, controls the water, and evacuates the water safely, and then having an irrigation system in place that waters specifically for the type of soils you have and the plants that you've put in, that is where you end up with the sweet spot in the landscape. Things are taken care of, and you're not relying on, did I give it enough, or did I not give it enough, or it's rained 2 inches in the past 24 hours, am I going to flood out, am I going to erode out? This is where we get into that sweet spot, and not the Goldilocks effect of too much or too little. We were never meant, as humans, we were never meant to live in the water, especially underwater. We just don't work that way. Well, 98% of all the plant material in the world was never meant to be in a water environment. We are not bald cypress, we are not water lilies, and most of your plants are the same way. They were never meant to be underwater or have their root system so saturated with water that you create a oxygen-starved, almost anaerobic type of situation. When it comes to your turf areas as well, you will find that the same rules apply when it comes to water management. Many times I have seen over the years where people have literally graded off hard pan soils, slapped down sod, said they had irrigation, but the coverage isn't very good. And what I find in most turf situations is that because there was no preparation for the turf or the sod bed or the seed bed, that the root systems penetrate less than an inch. They have to be watered so frequently, and the water mostly kind of runs off. It just is not retained in the soil because of the lack of preparation. It has hard pan clay or hard pan rocky soil, and the roots just aren't meant to penetrate into that kind of soil. So when it comes to hitting that sweet spot, what I really encourage people to do is go away from sprinkler systems that spray landscapes and go into a drip system where you get that deep, slow, infrequent watering that takes care of the root zones right at the ground level, most likely underneath the mulch layer, so we have no evaporation. The root zones are kept moist, they're kept cool from the mulch, and this is where that sweet spot is hit again. When it comes to the turf as well, turf is basically made to thrive in a 2 times a week, maybe 3 times a week. Give it about an inch of water or maybe a ½ inch of water per week, depending on where you live, and rely on the heavens to do the rest of the watering. Now, out in the arid West, where I'm at right now, and where I practiced in the Central Valley of California, we started to go to underground drip systems for turf. Check out Netafim, N-E-T-A, capital F-I-M. If you're interested in underground drip for turf areas, that's where we really started saving water, and we really hit that sweet spot without the 60 to 70% evaporation, watering at 8 o'clock in the morning on a 100-degree day, and most of the water is just going to evaporate anyway. Now, the other thing, we've talked about too much water, and we talk about the arid west. We're going to talk about not enough water. Now, you can throw an inch of water on your lawn, and if it is 70% of it is running off and very little of it is penetrating, we haven't done a darn thing useful for that turf, period. We haven't done anything useful. We've wetted the foliage of the turf, and that is about it. We have not got that water down into the feeder root systems of that turf, and it's running off onto the driveway or the sidewalk. We've all seen it. We've walked our neighborhoods, and we've seen neighbors with those kinds of lawns. Aerate and overfill with a compost or peat moss about every third year, and you will change the composition of that soil over time. And at least after you've aerated, you'll have the ability of, when you do water, you will have that water retention in the soil for quite some time. If you have a new landscape, a new baby in the house, so to speak, I strongly urge you to check on that landscape daily for the first 30 days. I really suggest that you test that drip system at least once a week for the first month, making sure everything is working correctly. Tell you a quick story. Back in 2004, I had a $40,000 backyard installation done. These people were so excited. I did my usual walkthrough at the end, told everybody how to take care of everything, the lighting, the irrigation, the drainage, the plants, the turf, everything. They took off 2 days later. Went for 2 weeks to Fiji. Well, the very next day, the guy went out and started fussing, and I'm going to use the word fussing instead of other things, fussing with the timer. And when he got done, he took off to Fiji for 2 weeks. When he came back, they had a $40,000 landscape that the only really living thing there was the patio we put in. And all the plants and the turf were dead as a doornail because he left the timer on off. He left the timer on off in 90-degree heat in the beginning of October. And they called up screaming at me. What am I supposed to do? Because you know something? Matt don't kill plants. That was never my intent as a landscape contractor. I rarely, ever replaced plants because of something that I did. Well, I went back down there and we found the culprit in about 5 minutes. The very first thing I did was I went out and I saw that all the turf was dead, the soil was dry as a bone, the planting beds were dry as a bone, and I went right to the irrigation, turned it on manually, everything worked. Went to the timer, it's in the off position. Now, as mad as they were, they had to eat a little crow because it wasn't anything that we had done. So we came back about a month later and we replaced all the plants, replaced all the turf, and then re-educated them again on how to take care of it. Goldilocks syndrome, too little. Same thing applies if you have containerized. Say you're in a condominium or an apartment, you have a balcony or a patio area, and you've planted up, half a dozen or 10 really nice containers. And what you end up with is something that looks really good. But if you don't end up taking care of it, you turn around and walk away and go skiing for the week, or you travel to some exotic area for the weekend and you forget to either have somebody water, you don't have an irrigation system, and you haven't watered, don't blame the plants. Plants aren't like a 2-year-old baby. They don't sit there and start crying. They tell us there's something wrong in much more demonstrative ways. They end up wilting. If there's too much water, they end up wilting. If there's not enough water, they end up wilting. You'll start to see yellowing leaves. You'll start to see a lack of new growth. And that's when, as the owner, you got to start checking stuff before it's too late. Oftentimes, in too much water, by the time you start seeing that yellowing, you've already rotted out all the capillary roots of that root ball, and it can't take up any more water because they're dead. They've rotted out, and they can't generate anymore because it's an anaerobic environment by now, and chances are you're going to lose the plant. So, to avoid that Goldilocks syndrome, here's my advice. Do it right the first time. Do not take shortcuts. I'll give you an example. I read a thread on Reddit not too long ago, and a person was asking, hey, I don't have a lot of money. Is it okay if I just take this new sod and slap it down over the old sod and right over the weeds that are there and call it good? There was at least a half a dozen people said, yeah, you should be okay. There was a half a dozen people that said, what the hell's wrong with you? You know, you can't do that. You got to do something right. So guys, remember, do it right the first time. Prep those planting holes, prep that sod or seed bed, make sure you've incorporated organic nutrients into the soil so you have that heavy soils, rocky soils, sandy soils back to a neutral, good type of growing medium, like a sandy loam, something like that. And then you will have a little bit of settling, which is okay, but you'll have a place for the root zones to start to expand out. You'll have a place for that turf roots to start to knit in. If you put it on a hard pan, it's not going to work, period. So to sum it up, hey, believe it or not, water, the #1 killer of residential landscapes, in my opinion. Too much or too little. Don't forget that Goldilocks syndrome. Make sure you get into good drainage, good grading when you start your landscape project. That is one of the best things you can do to ensure your landscape investment is going to work properly, especially when those heavens open up. Very, very important. Know your soil composition. What does it need to make it the prime soil in the neighborhood? What do you need to do to it? Most of the time, it's going to be 2 to 3 inches of compost over the top and rototill it in 3 to 4 inches for a sod bed. It's going to be taking that native soil and mixing it 50-50 with a good organic planting soil or planting mix. When it comes to water, try to go with a drip system for your planting beds and try to test your turf irrigation sprays to see how much is actually penetrating for each zone that you have turned on. If you have a particular zone that seems to have a lot of runoff, maybe you need to address that issue as far as aeration and compost or peat moss overfilling might really turn that water retention around for that particular area. And lastly, an old thing that I learned a long time ago from a person who knew a lot more about it than I did is do that second knuckle test. Yeah, seriously. Second knuckle test. If you can go out in the landscape and scratch down in the soil and you're finding good moist soil within that distance, you could probably postpone watering. Every situation will be different, I understand, but it's a good rule of thumb. You can also apply that to containers as well. If it's moist that far down, you can imagine what it's like that far down. There's plenty of water. Same goes for container plants. Hey guys, I'm Coach, and I hope this demystifies a little bit about the #1 killer of residential landscapes. You know, avoid that Goldilocks syndrome. Make sure you install, plant things, and prepare things right the first time. Not only that, but make sure you do your grading and you do those drainage systems. I can't tell you enough about drainage systems. You know, unless you have the perfect yard, which we all don't have, that is really going to control water when it comes to the winters and when those heavens open up big time on a monsoonal downpours or whatever you might have. Hey, I sure do appreciate you staying with me until the end of this video. Thank you very much. I hope everybody is happy and healthy. I hope everybody is getting that springtime itch underneath their skin and they can't wait to get out there and get those hands dirty. Hey, check out the plan of the week this week. And always, every Friday, I come at you with a brand new landscape informative video. Check out the podcast if you're out on the road too. You're out jogging one day. You can find those on all podcast major carriers. I'm Coach. Hey, take care. I'll see you next week.